Ah,
Aha! Hello, David.
hello.
Hi, welcome to our stream, and
Yeah,
nice to see you. Uh,
and you?
Thank you. I really appreciate everything, and especially for last minute filling in as my special co-host today.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So this is going to be a lot of fun. We're back with Space
Yeah.
1989. This episode, we are well into year two by now, David, and this will be interesting because I know we had you on for a year one segment, but this will be your first year two, so it'd be just fascinating to sort of get your insight on maybe some of the changes and the overall dynamic of year two versus year one, things like that.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. And for everybody else out there today, this is sort of an unusual time slot, number one. And we're just, I was sort of behind the scenes experimenting with a couple of things to try and get streaming into some of those Facebook groups again. They sort of took that ability away from us. We can still stream to pages, but groups, they've made it a little more difficult. And I couldn't actually get the streaming software hooked up tonight for some
Mm.
reason, but we're still in all the pages, so we'll be good. But along with everything else tonight, I'd just like to quickly introduce. We do have a special guest that's come on board last minute here, and this is Mr. Adrian Sherlock, all the way from down under in Australia. So we'll say hello to Adrian. Hello there.
Hello there.
All right, Adrian. We're global today.
We are. We are. We're encircling the Earth. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, definitely, definitely. So, yeah, welcome to Space 1999. This is your first segment, Adrian, and this is actually our first time that we've ever actually spoken. I believe I've seen you, of course, on the interwebs for many, many years now, and followed your work with your books and things like that. But it's nice to meet in person.
Oh, thanks very much, Warren. It's a pleasure to be here and great to have a chance to talk to both of you, in fact, because,
Yeah.
obviously I'm really a big fan of what you're doing. And David, of course, I've followed your work for many long years. So
Thank you. Thank you.
it's an honor to meet you as well.
Thank you.
David's work, of course, going many, many years back in time with
Many, many moons ago.
We're going to make him feel old if we keep saying many.
the old Starlog.
Too late. Too late.
I was going to say Starlog magazine. When did? Well, let's put it in perspective. Starlog started in what, 1976?
76. Yeah. 76. And I joined in, no, 70, I think 75 when the first issue came out.
Yeah,
Because they were quarterly originally.
Yeah.
So I think it was 75. And I joined them in the summer of 77. So
Right.
my first issue was number 7, which had the Eagle blueprints. That's how they got me in. They, Bob Mandel at ITC New York, recommended that I could consult on the Eagle blueprints. And from that, I got a summer job, and that went on for another 5.5 years. So,
Wow.
Amazing.
yeah.
Well, it was such a, we've talked about this before, but it was such a go-to back in the day, but pre-internet, pre message board and
Yeah.
all of that was our only resource, our only archive to keep up to date on what was happening in the science fiction world.
Yeah, I mean, all the things that we were doing, like the episode guides, were like, now you just go onto Internet Movie Database and it's there.
I can remember in the late 1980s when I left high school and I first started being able to actually travel and go anywhere. The first thing I did was take a trip on the train from Geelong, where I live, to the city of Melbourne, Australia. So I had to take a whole train trip and walk several city blocks in a city I wasn't really familiar with to go to a specialist bookstore where I could order the Starlog episode guide book, so I could get an episode guide on UFO, the precursor to Space 1999. Because I'd become a big fan of that series, and I didn't even know there was 26 episodes. I didn't know how many episodes. I didn't know the episode titles. You just accessing that information is child's play now, but at that time it was the lengths you had to go to. You had to, I traveled to another city and had to order a book from the States and then go for a second trip a few months later when it arrived.
Yeah.
You know, they call me at my house and say, your books arrived from America, take another train trip in from one city to another, to buy this
And now we
book.
just go on Amazon and get it.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, here I am now self-publishing on Amazon. But yeah, when I think of the elaborate lengths, that if you were a fan, we had to go to such lengths in those days to just get information about a show we like. And that was just an episode guide. That wasn't even it wasn't even analytical or reviews or anything like, when I'm writing a book, I try and mix plot description with some sort of
Right.
analysis and review and background information, all this kind of research I do. I was bending over backwards just to get a book that just told me what the hell happened in the episodes.
Yeah.
It's crazy how far we've come.
Well, I mean, that's how I got into the business in the first place. I was taking a film studies class in my first year of college, and I wanted to write a paper on Jerry and Sylvia Anderson because that was the stuff that I knew the best. But you couldn't get any information on them, and I just basically, screwed up my courage one day and went into Manhattan to ITC and just hoped that somebody could help me out. And I just lucked out. And they loaded me up with all kinds of, episode guides and sales material.
When we think of how the world was at that time, it's so easy for people nowadays to look back on something like, here's a Space 1999 episode that's got some talking trees or something, and they're going to say this looks cheesy or this looks ridiculous, or how did they come up with this idea, and just sort of ridicule it. But when we think, the situation people were in back then, they weren't inundated with science fiction ideas from left, right, and center like we are nowadays. Most people had never even heard of a story arc or anything in those days. So, it's often remarkable to think they even managed to pull off such generally high quality productions with what they had to work with at the time.
Yeah.
We take a lot for granted now.
Well, considering the difficulties they ran into in the year 2 production line compared to year 1. Year 1, you had, months, a year and a half to produce that show. Here they were trying to get the show on the air within 8 months, which was unheard of in England at the time.
Yeah, the British unions meant that it took twice as long really to make something as it did in the States. Yeah,
that's why we ended up with double up episodes and stuff like this one.
You'd get people from the States would write a comment on YouTube and say, "Oh, can you believe they only made 48 episodes of this show?" But I'm like, "Yeah, but that's the equivalent of making about 100 in America, because of the pace that the unions made them work at. You had unions that wanted a 45-minute tea break and would knock off at 5 o'clock or something.
Right.
Whereas in the States, they'd work all night if they had to get it.
And they work into the weekends too, which they never did really in England.
Yeah.
So
there's been some interesting stories I've noticed in recent years where they've spoken to the British cast and crew where they had to have an American star come over. And I guess this probably applied to Martin Landau and Barbara Bain as well.
Yeah.
Where they would sort of say, well, geez, these Americans were really they seemed rude and pushy, and we didn't get along with them very well. And I've often thought, well, maybe that's a culture clash because they'd come from a system where they were used to getting things done very productively, very quickly. And here the unions have got them moving at a snail's pace, and maybe it was a lot of frustration building up, or things like that. So
I mean, I was in England in the 90s, staying with Martin Bauer and his family down in Wareham, and we were in a pub one night, and people came up and were talking to me and asking me, why is life here so hard right now compared to the States? And the best answer I could give them was probably because in the States, we don't, worry about what other people think. We push through to get things done, which is not always a good way to go. I mean, I'm the first person to say how much I love the way the Japanese handle things,
Hmm.
the way everyone does their best job possible and nobody stands around and expects, a pat on the back from
Mm.
everybody. But it's a culture thing. I mean, the English are used to doing things a particular way. The Italians do things a particular way, and so
Mm.
forth. It's only right and wrong if you are used to working a different way. And
Yeah.
the quality of the filmmaking in England is superb just as much as it is in America. It's just a different way of life. And maybe it's a better way sometimes. Maybe people are less stressed out. You know.
Yeah, as a young man, I was almost kind of crippled by this belief in, because Australia had a culture, I guess, very related to the one in the UK.
Mhm.
And it was very much a sort of an almost socialist kind of idea that, the government will take care of you. And if you can't get a job, you'll be on welfare. And, there's socialized medicine. And
Mhm.
so the system sort of looks after you, but that's very pacifying. You end up a very
Yeah.
passive human being, sort of
Yeah.
reliant on. And so if I had problems as a young man, I would buy into this idea of sitting around kind of complaining, saying, well, why doesn't the government do something, or why doesn't society change, or when are they going to fix this and fix that, and then my life will be okay. And one day, I listened to a guy from Canada, and he'd done this seminar based on this idea of, well, you know, take responsibility on
Mhm.
yourself. And this was like an alien concept to me. Nobody had ever explained this to me before, but I started to realize this is the fundamental thing about America. It's like my feeling about America now is that it's a culture where if you don't work, you don't exist. You kind of have to be proactive and make things happen. So, you look at Irwin Allen, you can sort of say, well, okay, some of his shows were rubbish, but I mean, the man produced what, 80 something episodes of Lost in Space in
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
seasons.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know what I mean? Jonathan Harris famously said to Irwin Allen, we finish an episode in the middle of the day, and the director with the script for the next episode is waiting
Mhm.
off stage. He walks onto the set, and we start filming the next one straight away. Can't we have the rest of the day off? Irwin Allen just said to him, "This is what we're paying you for.
Mhm.
Keep working." It was like a conveyor
Yeah.
belt, but the man just believed in
TV back then was crazy
activity.
because they had shows on every week. I mean, the
Yeah,
first season of Lost in Space was, I think, over 30 episodes.
yeah, yeah. He would make 30 episodes a year.
Yeah.
I look at Space 1999 and think, couldn't you have done another six?
Yeah.
Season one was so good, couldn't we have just had half a dozen more?
Well, I
You know?
think that was all due to the budget. I think it's how they budgeted to fit in the 24 episodes, and even that was stretching the money.
But
Yeah.
this what you're mentioning, guys, is this cultural difference, and when we talk about year two versus year one from a production standpoint, this lends very much into who Freddie Freiberger was, right? He
Mhm.
was that
Yeah,
American
yeah.
producer,
He really
right?
brought the American sensibility
Yes,
across to
yes,
production, didn't he?
hired to do a
And
job.
shot
They wanted content, and he was boom, boom,
Well,
boom. Like this.
and the funny thing is, when we did, Rob Wood and I did the book with Chris Penfold. Even you wouldn't imagine at the leisurely pace they did series one that it would be this giant eating machine for scripts that you constantly had to hammer out scripts. But now imagine the pace for year two when
Mm.
they were, even producing 2 episodes simultaneously. And, for good or bad, they had to have a script ready to shoot.
Yeah.
So that's
I mean,
why
I've
you have a much more unevenness in the episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some, criticisms of year two, obviously, as I think we all do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the other side of it, you would have to say that Freiberger, for all of his limitations, was clearly he clearly brought that kind of American Hollywood kind of sensibility of,
Yeah.
okay, you guys were going to get this job done.
Well, he
Right.
delivered. He
Well,
delivered.
he delivered what he was hired to do, because
Mm.
most of the format of year 2 came from the fact that ITC America demanded these changes.
Americanization.
These were the
They
changes.
were really pushing for it to be more like Star Trek, weren't they?
Yeah.
Right. Because they wanted the humor, they wanted the lightness, they wanted the more color, and the fact that they didn't get the action stuff they needed at the start, and they had to do all those crazy airbrush publicity shots to make them look at these special effects we got, which they really didn't have because they airbrushed them. But this is what they were trying to sell the show as, a more action-oriented show.
Mm.
The fact that we've got episodes that really do stand up very well, is a testament to the writers, and sometimes it's just how things turn out. This episode is an example of it's based on the classic Frederick Brown arena again, with a little bit of the Great Vegetable Rebellion thrown in, but it's trying to be a serious episode. It really does have some great dialogue scenes between Koenig and Maya, even though it was originally written as a Tony Maya script.
Mm.
But a decision was made. Probably the Landaus decided that one of them had to be a lead in each of the double up episodes, as opposed to doing a Koenig Helena episode and a Tony and Maya episode, which is probably what Freiberger and Jerry Anderson originally envisioned.
Yeah, and that's you've raised a really interesting issue there too, David, because that's another thing which often comes up is, Martin Landau and Sylvia Anderson famously did not see eye to eye. But it's interesting from her side, he was, driven by ego and selfishness and, a bit having a tantrum and demanding his own way.
Yeah.
But when you see him in interviews talking about his point of view, he quite reasonably argues that what he was doing was fighting for the integrity of the series. If you didn't have your viewer able to latch onto a consistent set of main characters each week, then you weren't going to get that audience loyalty that they were looking for.
Right. I mean, he was a big science fiction fan, because he used to call me at Starlog and ask for recommendations for books to read, because he devoured science fiction novels. He loved them. So it wasn't a question of he didn't look down at this show at all. He was very proud of it. I think when they got into stuff he didn't like, especially in the second series, he was more vocal about it, but he still was a professional and he committed to it. The real failure year 2 was they pitched this major role for Helena, for Barbara Bain's character in the show, and they never achieved it. She was supposed to be essentially second in command. That's why they started off with saying she was in charge of life support. But somehow, I guess the writers kind of failed her, and they just couldn't write a very strong female character, and they just kept deferring a lot of the command stuff to Tony when she doubled up with him.
I always used to like in the first season how, Koenig would go to almost insane lengths of, risk-taking to get to some planet or something. And then when it all turned into a gigantic disaster, she would just very quietly say to him, "John, take us back to Alpha," or "John, we can't stay here." Yeah. And he would just, without even questioning, he would just pick up his commlock and say, "Get ready to lift off. We're going back to Alpha." It's like, wow. She kind of was the sensible woman who won at the end, which was kind of surprising. It was done in such a subtle way. Yeah, I never picked up on it for probably 30 years. It was only sort of in the
probably why a lot of people think that she was cold in the first series. It was just she was
very understated, but it was
right. She was more down to earth. She's like,
She was
it was
grounded.
like Scully and Mulder. She was,
Mm.
you know, he was the dreamer, she was the realist. So,
Right.
Yeah, I really saw that when I remember when the X-Files was at the height of its popularity. I really did look at Scully and think she's a lot like Helena from Space 1999.
yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting, fellas. I'm not sure if well, David, you probably realize, because I sort of discovered this going through some of Martin's documents, you know, the binders that we got, and everything that you used for your books with Bob there. But not a lot of people actually realize that. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, that Freddie was actually considered to be the producer of Year One. They were talking to him way.
Oh, they asked a lot of people. Yeah.
But he was on the short list for sure. He was like,
they were looking at Star Trek people from the beginning.
Yeah.
Dorothy Fontana was asked, and so was Gene Roddenberry at one point.
Matter of Life and Death was only, I think, the second script that was made into a completed episode, because I think Lee Katzin took a really long time on the pilot and also Black Sun.
Yeah. No, Breakaway.
Breakaway, and then Black Sun. Yeah.
Breakaway not only took weeks,
Breakaway took ages,
and they kept shooting for months after that, because all the stuff with Alan in the Eagle as the moon's being blasted out of Earth orbit was done, like, I think, in March or April of the following year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So they were always one.
Yeah, so when they did Matter of Life and Death, the original script for that was written by the guy who wrote Obsession for Star Trek, the one about the
Art Wallace, who wrote
Art Wallace,
Dark Shadows, the soap opera.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. I saw Art Wallace's name on Dark Shadows as well. I was watching a bit of that a few months ago.
I have his original script here.
Yeah, so how interesting that right from the very beginning. And of course, the man who ended up writing the final draft was Johnny Byrne, who went on to write for Doctor Who in the 80s. So I think that's kind of, to me, a little bit of a telling point about Space 1999. You kind of got, people whose names you would associate with both Trek and Doctor Who.
Well, Belak, who was brought in as the original story editor for the show after, well, actually, Chris Penfold was, but they wanted an American, so they brought in George Belak, and Chris was his assistant. George brought in all these New York writers that he knew, Art Wallace, a bunch of other people. There were a lot of scripts that were never made or were actually written by other authors for the actual screen. But Johnny Byrne was brought in, and that was his test, essentially. What can you do with this over a weekend? And if he had the script ready to go, and they said, great, you're hired. You're going to work on the show with us. And that was after they let George Belak go before they even started shooting Breakaway, because he and Jerry Anderson just didn't see eye to eye as to where they wanted the show to go.
Yeah, Jerry wanted his, I guess, standard style of, Moonbase Alpha would be kind of like Shadow Headquarters or, Tracy Island, but in the original Jerry and draft script for the half-hour version, it's a very militaristic base like Shadow, because that's what the show came from. It was originally UFO series too. Yeah. So I remember reading that George Belak wanted, once they left orbit, everyone to be kind of at each other's throats, like in Lifeboat or something, like, let us off this moon, let's get back to Earth.
There was going to be a lot of internal tension. And that shows up in a lot of the early scripts. There was one episode that we had in our book that was never filmed, and it had to do with this planet where there was one group that were complete idiots and these other ones that were very militaristic, and the Alpha people weren't very nice either. And I think they wanted to reduce that a little. Which it kind of worked. I really didn't think we needed to see unlikable people every week, because then you wouldn't.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about both UFO and Space 1999, and it's probably one of the reasons why the shows are still so popular all these years later, is that a lot of the dark sort of implications of the scenarios which the shows are built on kind of bubble away there under the surface as a subtext, underneath the sort of the fact that the people still act very kind of professional, almost like they're falling back on professional roles and routine as a coping mechanism or a way of moving ahead to the situation.
Oh, yes.
But there's this very dark sort of subtext to both of those shows, and even in season 2, you know, with Freddie trying to lighten it up, it kind of it's almost like when you do black comedy, you know what I mean, or dark satire. You know, the more you try and lighten up a dark situation, the more it just sort of highlights how dark things are. I mean, even a ridiculous sort of attempt at when they try to do a comedy episode like Brian the Brain or the Tabor. Brian and the Tabor are both, they're kind of sickos, you know, they're kind of really twisted, psycho kind of characters. You know what I mean? They've brought on to make it, oh, we're going to have a fun one this week. We're going to try a little bit of comedy on this show. We're going to have a funny episode. And it's like, you get to the end and go, hang on, he wanted like Koenig to sell Maya to him, like this is like trafficking. He wanted to traffic a human to him or traffic a woman to him. You know, this guy's a piece of dirt here. You know, he's a low life. You know, and Brian, you know, slaughtered his creators. He's a robot. He's an AI who slaughtered his creators. So he comes on all funny and jokes like he's trying to be Jerry Lewis in outer space, but underneath he's this twisted lunatic who murdered everyone like it's like a newborn child, this AI. The child that murdered its parents, you know, it's homicidal maniac computer, you know. So that's an interesting point about the show. Even the very understated performances in season 1, behind these very quiet, reserved kind of whispering conversations of John and Helena, there's this very dark underpinning of, you know, we're adrift in the blackness of space here. We're on the verge of survival. We're telling everybody that, oh yeah, we're going to find a place to live, but come on, we're probably doomed here, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some very dark stuff, and maybe Jerry's insistence on keeping it squeaky clean on the surface kind of paid off, because you get this scenario where people are acting like it's okay, but underneath there's a dark underpinning. It kind of starts to have an unsettling relevance to what real life is like in a way.
Well, that's true.
We go to work, we eat 3 meals a day, but then we look at the news and we think, how is the world okay?
No, as I said, that's true of all his shows. It was always, as you know, oh, the Tracy family rescues, you know, all these people, but you know, everyone's always at the point of death or something. Or Captain Scarlet with all the great colorful costumes and neat gadgets, and yet they're still dealing with aliens that kill people randomly and resurrect them as zombies. You know,
I recently had an interesting thought about Captain Scarlet, that it's kind of Thunderbirds tipped on its head, because in Thunderbirds, you know, you're a likable person, a regular Joe. You get into some trouble, you send out a radio message, and international rescue comes and saves you. On Captain Scarlet, you're a nice, likable, regular Joe. You get into some trouble, no one saves you. You actually die. Then you get brought back to life as a zombie by aliens, and then the people like international rescue show up, but instead of saving you, they just kill you all over again. You know,
right? They blow you to smithereens.
It's like it's a really nasty turning of Thunderbirds on its, like an inversion of it,
you know. Even the original concept that the Andersons came up with for Space 99 was dark, because they were focusing on the theory that having the humans thrust out into space, they weren't explorers, they were essentially the virus that was going to contaminate the purity of the universe.
And I mean that comes up in War Games too,
right? Right.
You can sort of see all of those sort of ideas about war and it's such a War Games, and it's also in the Missing Link episode.
Yeah,
this idea of a world without fear.
Yeah,
you know, when that contains some of the best dialogue, I would argue, in the entire series, where, you know, when is it Peter Cushing's daughter says, look, there are wonders out there, you know, beyond your imagination. All the good things you've ever wanted on earth, I offer you, a world without fear.
Yeah.
And that image, Helena says it in War Games.
It's reminiscent
world
of that
without
same.
fear,
Yeah.
very strange, beautiful. We've lost
Even this episode has some wonderful dialogue, because there's the whole thing where Conan's talking about his first wife and her dying in this world war, and then Maya says people fought people because they were different. Well, that's disgusting.
Yeah,
you know, that was a great scene.
In the beginning of Rules of Luton, and we're finally getting to the episode.
Yay!
Yay!
In a roundabout way.
Please, you're getting rested.
We got there. We got there in the end. There's this part where you know, she says, "Do we have to kill them?" And he says, "Maya, yes, in order if we want to survive." At the very end, when he finally overpowers the alien, you know, he looks over at Maya and she shakes her head like no, and that's when Koenig goes into his rant and yells, you know, "No, I will not kill," you know. Yeah. And they're like, kill the criminal who committed murder on Luton. He says, and he really lets them have a piece of his mind and says, "No, you are the criminals. You would like to see things die. You'd like to see everything here die, you know, to satisfy your lust for blood." And they're like, okay, you can go now. You could have stopped us. You could have prevented all this. You deliberately, you know, let this happen. Okay, you can leave now.
Close the seeds of revolution. Yes.
Yeah. I've never seen angry plants get pissed off before.
Yeah.
There we are.
You know, considering if you just forget the fact that the idea of talking trees is kind of silly. It's a beautifully photographed episode because it takes place almost completely outside.
It's all on location. It's Pinewood.
On location, they went to trouble to build a dinosaur graveyard.
Directed by Val Guest, the man who shot the two Hammer Quatermass movies with Brian Donlevy, the first two Quatermass movies. You know? Yeah, this was a top director, and this was at Black Park Lake. Yeah. And you've got Martin Landau, who's a great actor, giving a pretty strong performance all in all. I mean, can you imagine if this was a Buck Rogers episode and it was Gil Gerard, it would have been a piece of absolute fluff. But Martin Landau, he plays the pain and suffering he goes through in this episode. Yeah. He gets reduced to tears, and you know he's delirious and he's bleeding and he's raging in anger at the judges of Luton at the end. You know, this is, I mean, he really tries to elevate at least the character of Koenig above whatever's going on around him.
No, he always tried to rise above the material, even if he disliked the episode. Even all that glisters, he manages to pull off, even though it was an unsalvageable episode.
Yeah, I mean, I often think of in folk horror, which is a big thing in England. If you know, like the Wicker Man, for example, you know, before Christianity, there was, you know, centuries of pagan rule in the UK, and there was the Kingdom of Mercia, which was sort of Middle England, and they had all of these traditions, and it's in Macbeth. Macbeth says, you know, "Thou sure and firm set earth, hear not my steps, which way they walk, for fear the very stones prate of my whereabouts." And he says that trees, you know, stones have been known to move and trees to speak. You know, so this thing of, and it's in the movie Night of the Demon or Curse of the Demon in America. It's in the trees. He says it's in the trees.
Yeah.
This idea of a demon in the trees. So nymphs and fairies associated with the cycle, and of course the name Maya comes from the month of May, which means change. It's a seasonal change. So there's all of these sort of pagan beliefs dating back centuries to pre-Christian England, which has been which is still sort of there in England as a subtext. As it comes up in folk horror stories.
I just don't. I
and it's
just
all
wouldn't
about
expect Fred
fertility and
Freiberg to
trees.
know on this.
What's that?
I just wouldn't expect Fred Freiberg to have known or pulled on this. I think.
No, but the idea that we just see the trees,
Oh, yeah.
just motionless trees, and then this sort of disembodied voice. It's almost like it could almost be interpreted by the viewer if you think of the, what do they call it, the death of the author, where you never mind what the author intended. It's what you take from the episode as a viewer.
Mhm.
I see three trees and I hear this disembodied voice, and I think it's almost like the tree spirit or something. You know, it seems almost like Quatermass used the thing of the green man, you know, where the guy was evolving into a plant monster, you know, which is there's pubs called the Green Man all over the UK, you know,
right?
It dates back to pagan beliefs about trees and combining with humans and tree spirits and the cycle of nature and the seasons. So, yeah, this idea of a world of where there's a voice coming out of the trees and trees are passing judgment. It's not bad. It's not as, I don't think it's as bad as people think when they look at it from a purely you know, objective standpoint. Go, oh well, it's talking trees. That's ridiculous. You know? Well, but if you tap into this idea of there's an intelligence speaking.
Oh, definitely.
You see three trees there, like a trio of like the three wise monkeys, you know, sitting in judgment. That's kind of an eerie image in a way. It's not bad, actually.
Well, absolutely. All I was going to say, guys, is that, I mean, what you're sort of making me realize here, Adrian, is that there was actually, when you dig deep, there was some pretty interesting and unique science fiction concepts in year two. But I think the problem was that they were, because of all the tonal changes, they're kind of all glossed over, right?
Well, I think in the hands of another writer who would know a lot of this backstory that Adrian has brought up. I think, I mean, like Nigel Neal could have turned this into a really good horror episode. Or
imagine if this episode had happened on Earth and someone was actually in the town of Luton or something, and they went up in the hills, and there was just a disembodied voice coming out of the tree, and someone just said that's the spirit or something of the trees, and maybe the person was dressed in like a pagan type costume with antlers or something on their head and doing some sort of weird, you know, ceremony of the, you know, the sun god or something, you know. There was something about
there's the M. Night Shyamalan movie where the trees are poisoning.
That's right, yeah.
The earth. I mean,
I'm not sure he did a great job of it from what I've heard, but again, the idea
wasn't really as bad. I think people kind of rail on the concept, but there have been, you know, a lot of Japanese folklore is going to spirits and trees and stuff. I think in the hands of a writer who maybe even had more time, you know, a 1 hour episode certainly would not have serviced this well. You could have made something even better about it. I think, you know, I think Fred just started off with the concept of taking Arena again, because everyone else has used Arena. It was used in Blake 7. It was used in Buck Rogers. It was used in an Outer Limits episode. So it's an off-used concept.
It's become a standard of the genre.
It's a trope.
Yeah. Even the Darmok one in Star Trek Next Generation is a variation.
So I don't fault the episode for the talking trees per se. As I said, the episode had a lot of great moments. It probably, I think, in my mind, would have worked better had it been a Tony Maya episode or John and Helena episode.
One of my impressions of it, I was watching it one time, and he's talking about this idea of the war and how it changed their society, and they built this world, and he lost his wife, and I suddenly had this thought of, gee, you know, considering Freiberg has come in, and he's only had this one season, you know, he's put in a backstory, he's put in a dead wife, he's put in a historical explanation for this future they're in. He's given us Psychon, Maya, her shape-changing powers. he's. I thought he's kind of almost tried to set up his own version of
Yeah.
like a complete, overall concept of the show. So yeah, considering he didn't have a lot of time, he may not have done a particularly brilliant job in some ways, but he did try. He did kind of try to give this thing whatever he felt it was missing.
No, he wasn't a complete failure by any means. The biggest sin was simply just ignoring the fact that season one existed, which just created just all kinds of oddities between the shows. But he tried very well to deliver the show he was hired to do, and in that respect, he did a good job. I mean, certainly not all the episodes that he's credited as writing as Charles Woodgrove were terrible. I mean, I know there are some people who think Space Warp is a bit mindless, but I think it's a fun episode.
Yeah, it's got its flaws, but it's a real popcorn episode. I think that's how I described it in my book.
Yeah, and sometimes you need a good
popcorn and just watch it. It's just a rip roaring runaround.
Yeah,
but again, this is the great thing about the show is every time you kind of say, well, this episode is one of the worst ones. There's something that salvages it. Someone pointed out to me that the eagle going nuts and spinning out of control and crashing in the hangar is one of the best special effects they ever did on the show.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, yeah, there is that. But then, of course, it's directed by Peter Medak, who, this guy directed an episode of Breaking Bad, which is,
I know.
the most highly acclaimed drama of all time.
Thing out Spectre and Space Warp.
Wow.
Visually, his setups and camera angles just incredible.
Yeah, there's a scene of Tony Ossoba and a couple of the other guards, might be Pierre or one of them, in their purple sleeves going along the corridor, and the camera seems to be rolling along at floor level, looking up at him, making this corridor look huge. And he's just got some amazing wide angle shots and very wide lenses and things he used to make the base look bigger and make the
which it wasn't in the second.
For year two. That was an achievement.
I mean, sometimes the smaller base added to the claustrophobia, which worked. It's just that, nowadays when we sit and watch 4 or 5 episodes in one sitting, you suddenly realize, we're in the same corridor, we're going to the same room, which you weren't meant to do originally, but it's the different strengths between that. That's why I always think of year 2 as sort of the reimagined new series. It sort of stands alone on its own, because it really doesn't offer any tie into the first season. Because
it was almost a soft reboot.
It was.
Well, oddly enough, it was actually in Starlog. I read comments from, it must have been Jerry or Abe Mandel or someone. There was something in there, and it was an explanation about season 2, and it said the reason they moved underground was because they realized they were vulnerable in space.
Yeah.
And so after reading that, I just thought, oh, okay, so this is a few years later and things have changed, and so it was kind of like, when the comparison I would make would be the first 3 years of Tom Baker Doctor Who, which was gothic horror, very high quality, very atmospheric and scary. Behind the sofa, watching the scary stuff was kind
Holy smokes, guys.
Hey,
oh wow, Anton Phillips! I chatted with Anton.
Thought he would want to join us. Hasn't he heard enough about me?
Hello, Anton. Lovely to see you again. So it was kind of like, season 1. If you think of Force of Life or the Troubled Spirit, or the Dragon's Domain, you were scared of Bridget as a kid behind the sofa, kind of like the gothic horror era of Doctor Who. But then if you look at Tom Baker, they wanted to tone down the horror. Tone down this horror, bring up more humor. And so you then got 3 seasons where it was kind of lighthearted, and Douglas Adams came in and you got a space pirate captain who was literally, he was a robot pirate, and he had a robot parrot, and they had to cut lines out of the script that was pieces of silicate, and so I feel like season 2 was kind of like that. It was like it was like they got told to amp up the humor and
oh yeah, no, that definitely was what he was supposed to do, and essentially, Jerry took a back seat, and he just was, production as far as making sure the effects were done in time and everything, and it was Fred really running the show.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a pity in a way that he was less involved, because I think if you listen to Sylvia, she said you had to kind of fight for that realism. She said she would have meetings with the writers and sort of say to them, yeah, that's a great idea, but it's not believable, or you've got to keep it believable, keep it realistic, you've got to keep it so that the audience can buy it. And she commented, I don't know how much she actually watched of season 2, but she said that she suspected that Fred Freiberger would go with a good idea even if it wasn't particularly believable or convincing or realistic. It was just, I've got an idea, let's do this.
Well, because it looks good on screen, they had to have monsters, which is what they really want. They wanted, the guys in the gorilla suits.
Yeah, well, that's right. There's 3 monster runarounds.
Right. This is what the American producers wanted, because back then, this is what people like Abe Mandel thought science fiction was. Pulp adventures. That's all they knew from. That's why shows back then you didn't get too many serious science fiction shows, because you were selling it to people who looked at science fiction as something for the kids.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I do feel now that we have gone to the other extreme.
Yeah,
I do kind of miss a lot of the the simple self-contained stories, the characters who aren't talking about their feelings or their personal life continually while they're trying to do their job. I kind of feel like we've swung so far in the opposite direction, but it's actually made me look back on a lot of the shows from the 60s and 70s and say, there was a lot we didn't appreciate at the time, how good we had it, because a lot of those shows were great. There was still things of interest there, but it was kept in check a little bit. It was never out of hand. It never overwhelmed the entertainment. It was often just a subtext with a hint here and a hint there.
Yeah, well, the character drama was added to flesh out the plot. Now it's the character drama, and then they try and find a way to shoehorn a plot around it.
Hey, guys, I just want to mention real quick, Anton, if you're still out there, it looks like you were maybe trying to join in. So I've actually just sent you a link via email. If you're still around and still want to join us, you're more than welcome.
Oh, it would be lovely to talk to Anton Phillips on the show, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Anton made a really interesting comment, I thought, when I saw him talking on Facebook, which was that sometimes the second season looked cheap, whereas he said in the first season it never looked cheap. The first season was based on 1999.
I mean, now that you watch the show on Blu-ray, you could see that even the sets looked scuffed. I mean, I always thought that the reason they had these sticker labels all over the place was to cover the cracks in the wall. Instead of repairing.
I actually did a what's that? You can do that thing where you look online and ask what money at a particular time would be inflationarily adjusted. So Space 1999's budget, inflationarily adjusted to now, came out at I think it was $98 million. So I guess with 48 episodes, it's about $2 million an episode.
But they have a lot less money for the second series. The salaries for the production personnel from year one. Everyone got a pay boost. That's also why a lot of people like Brian Johnson and stuff were in the main title, in the episode main titles, because that was part of the deal to, you know, give them a sort of bump in recognition, as well as giving them a bump in salary. But you know, with all the salary, and they had less production time, less money for a budget, so they had to find ways to cut corners.
Yeah, I think that there was an inflation situation in the late '70s in the UK,
Yes.
Which affected Doctor Who. I remember very badly.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that was the Tom Baker story Underworld was all done with chroma key. They blue screen actors onto miniature caves and things. It looked terrible, but
they were supposed to go on location and they couldn't.
Yeah, they said even the set designer, he said we didn't even have money to build a set. He said, can I build what, just maybe one part of a cave? No, we don't even have enough money for that. He said, you're kidding, really? So when it was all over, apparently the producers said to the director, I'll get you to do something easier next time, like a remake of Ben-Hur. You know?
Yeah.
I think money wasn't going as far.
No, it wasn't going as far, but I think, you know, having double up crews and stuff cost them a lot of money too.
Yeah, of course.
Because you're paying, you know, double salaries in a week for 2 directors, 2 DPs, 2, you know.
Oh yeah, Mark Anthony Craig's just told us inflation was at 27% in December 1975.
Wow.
Yeah, so imagine, you know, Fred Freiberger's trying to do Space 1999 season 2, and then of course you've got, you know, Philip Hinchcliffe's replacement was Graham Williams on Doctor Who. You know, so these guys are trying to do TV that looks, you know, like cinema level production. They're trying to do big sprawling stories of other planets and outer space.
Yeah.
And money's just not going where it was going just a couple of years earlier. So yeah, I guess it must have been quite a tricky thing. Bringers of Wonder always struck me as looking really good, and I saw a comment in an interview with Fred Freiberger about that, where he said, "Oh, I realized when we got this 2-part story, and that I could split my production costs across 2 episodes." And I thought, yeah, they should have done a lot more 2-part stories. They would have probably benefited from having the production budget of 2 episodes, and then you have some of the sets and some of the costumes and some of the locations from both appearing in each of the 2 parts. You know.
Well, the difficulty with doing that is when ITC syndicates a show, they have to make prints for the number of stations running it, and if you have 2-part episode, they have to have more prints available because the station's going to need the second episode right away. Whereas, especially in the first season, the show was jumbled up all over the place. Some places went breakaway to War Games, other places went breakaway to Dragon's Domain or breakaway to another episode, because everything after the first episode was just, you know, they print up maybe half the amount of prints they had for breakaway. Even less.
Yeah. I remember hearing that they avoided doing 2-parters because of syndication. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but with year 2, because they were so close, I mean, it's not like it was during the 80s when they were doing like Star Trek The Next Generation, and Paramount would send the episodes by satellite to the stations. And they downloaded, so they never had to make prints. The station would just record the broadcast on videotape and then play it back.
Yeah, so you know, I think when you look at Rules of Luton and you know, the beta cloud, you know, I've sometimes thought, well, you know, why not have, you know, if you're going to have a monster runaround, why just have one monster runaround, but make it a 2-parter rather than doing 2 separate ones? You know, have maybe someone goes down to a planet and there's a bunch of monsters down there chasing people around, and then in part 2 they get back to the base, but one of them comes back to the base, and then they have to deal with it on the base. And you know, I mean, something like that. You know, split it.
I mean, there are things that could have been done. I mean, you know, and there were advantages when they did Bringers of Wonder. They were able to build actually a brand new set and corridor for the records lab, which was a completely, I don't even think that was in the same stage because they had to do the fire effect.
And I think they just managed to build a richer, more involving narrative than you can if you're trying to do that type of story.
Yeah, we have more time for character development too in a story like that. But,
well, you're right, David. Not only the corridor in part one, but then the whole monitoring station in
which was the biggest set I think they ever built.
Yeah,
that was your one.
That looked fantastic.
Yeah,
really, that looked epic. Yeah. It really gave it an epic feel.
Yeah.
So that's an advantage, but it was also a budget saver because I remember Jerry Anderson telling me the story that Fred Freiberger had dreams of a giant moon buggy battle on the lunar surface, and he had to keep reminding Freiberger, we got one moon buggy. That's it. One. We can't do.
You wanted like a Starsky and Hutch episode.
Something like that. It was like it would have looked really ridiculous, you know.
So did that get rolled over into the aforementioned space warp, where it was a battle between the moon buggy and the creature?
Probably. You know, you don't waste an idea.
That's the worst. That's the worst scene in the whole of Space 1999. I think everything that can go wrong went wrong in that scene. I think the door that blew up, you could see it was styrofoam. I think Alan's helmet came open. The creature was clearly the one from the Beta Cloud wearing a giant wig. It just everything that went. The worst moment of the whole of Space 1999 is definitely the moon buggy chasing the monster on the moon surface in the
Didn't some of the moon surface itself sort of get kicked up, or it was like almost like a fabric of some kind? And
as the moon buggy is doing the roll on the rock,
it retained its dignity. Yeah.
But
the set of the moon retained its dignity, but I think everything else went wrong.
and Derek Wadsworth, I loved him. He was a terrific guy, but doing the John Barry routine where you play action music against a slow moving scene didn't work there. Did not work. I mean, it just kind of made it more tedious.
My feelings about Space Warp have definitely softened over the years. I appreciate it now as a fun run around.
Yeah, there are other things about it that are great, and I mean that's why I used it when I did Cosmic Princess, because I thought it paired nicely with Metamorph as a Maya story. So
it does have a lapse on the moon, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But still, out of 48 episodes, they did. If that was their worst, well.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was their worst. No, I think the episode that disappointed me the most was Catacombs of the Moon, and that was always because before the episode aired, Bob Mandel wrote this press release for the episode about these Dali-esque visions, and he sold up what it was going to look like, and all we ended up with was a poster bed, the leftover moon mountain cutouts from outside Koenig's window, and fire sticks, and it was like, what?
When I saw that on I didn't hear any of that, and I just saw it on free-to-air television on a cathode ray, and I saw this vision of a 4-poster bed with these sort of drapes and this woman there, and the guy trying to reach her, and he can't get to her because of a ring of fire, and it's outside of the moon. And it seemed kind of surreal. I like that.
Yeah, but it just wasn't what they had promised me.
Right. Yeah. Well, we've been joined by the man and the legend himself, and Phillips. So such a great honor to have you with us.
Yeah, but it just wasn't what they had promised me.
We've been joined by the man and the legend himself.
I'm not so sure about the legend bit.
Well, we'd like to pick you up,
But hey, listen, you know what? My television broke down and the insurance company came and they've taken my television away. So I've been without television for the past 2 weeks
Oh
almost.
no.
Apparently,
see-
they have to get the spare part from Moonbase Alpha or some such thing.
I told people that I thought The Rules of Luton was a really great episode, and the television people came around and confiscated my television, said that I was a silly man and I would not be allowed to watch television or say such silly things ever again. The TV police came and took mine away. Yeah.
But anyway, I just thought, because I'm confined to my laptop and PC, and was doing the browsing thing, and there you were, and I thought, hey, I wonder if I could get in on this and just say hello.
Hello.
Wonderful. What
Good to see you.
incredible surprise. It's so nice to see you, and you're always welcome. You know that.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. How are you all anyway?
Good.
Wonderful.
Good. Yeah. I think we're all doing okay. Adrian's tuning in from Australia, and David Hirsch, you know Anton, and we do these little segments every once in a while. Usually Roy is my co-host, and he couldn't make it tonight. But
All right. Yeah.
yeah, no, it's a lot of things going on the next week as well. I haven't really touched on this, but I'll towards the end of the segment, I'll get into some shout outs. But we're all really excited as well because we're planning to launch a Kickstarter for that Return to Moonbase Alpha project.
Okay.
If you recall, and you were so gracious with your time and helping us out with that first trailer there a couple of years ago. That narrates.
I think it's very ambitious for you to ask me to say Dr. Matthias will be there. I'd be very pleased to be there, but I'm just pleased to see next week, really.
Yeah, well, we're doing really well with the Kickstarter pre-launch. Actually, I've sort of had to take a crash course on all things crowdfunding the last month or so here. But according to numbers and metrics, like we're in a really good position. Going into the actual launch on April 1st. And no, for anybody out there, it's not an April Fool's joke.
Hey, they say they're going to launch a rocket to the moon.
And we just found out on Sunday
the moon base.
the actual NASA launch is the same day. I couldn't believe it. I
Can
fell
you
off my
believe
chair.
that?
Yeah. So
they want to orbit a woman around the moon for the first time.
right.
And then,
And
they've announced they want to build a moon base.
Yeah.
So it's all coming true.
Yeah. Crazy. Anton, how have you been? You're back home in the UK now?
Yes. And
You went away for a few months again.
I was in the Canary Islands, where it's nice and sunny and warm at this time of year.
Very nice.
And then it got nice and warm over here for the past few days. And then yesterday, winter returned with hailstorms and hurricane force winds almost. So that got me looking again and thinking, nope, I got to go again. So I'm heading south once more to find the sun again early next month.
Oh, good for you. Good stuff.
How are you, Warren? Are you well?
Yeah, well, very, very busy with everything going on. And of course, the other thing is you and I will certainly be in touch over the next few months, and we'll make some arrangements for you to also get up to Manchester in September, right?
Yeah, good. And David, you're looking well.
Thank you. You too. Good to see you.
I hope you're having some decent weather over there.
Today,
It's been kind of bizarre in America.
Today's been a very warm day, but tomorrow, or I think Saturday, they said it's going to be freezing again.
What part of America are you in, David?
I'm in New York City.
Okay. Oh, wow. New York. I love New York.
Oh, it's so nice. Everybody's chiming in, Anton, saying hello and sending you well wishes.
Okay. Well, listen, as I say, I was just passing by in the neighborhood, thought I'd drop in, say hello. Lovely to see you all.
Lovely to see you.
So I will now move on down the street.
Okay. Oh, they have
We're honored to have you have a chance to say hello to you, Anton.
Okay, lovely.
I've
lovely to
loved
see
your
you.
acting
Thank
since
you
I was a
very, very
child.
much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
We'll chat soon.
Take care.
Wow.
How about
Next time this TV breaks down.
But I tell you what, fellas, for being somewhat of an unscripted episode, this was a really sort of off the cuff and unexpected, but in a wonderful way all around.
And have we
Sometimes
really
things
even
kind of
talked
work
about the
out.
episode?
Well, see, David, you've got the judges of Luton behind you, so I hope they're not judging you too harshly today.
Just making sure I say the right things. That's all.
We are the judges of Luton.
Yes.
Do you know, I think, and we sort of alluded to Freddie, and of course, I think everybody out there knows how he apparently came up with the name. And a few minutes ago, we were talking about the disembodied voice. Maybe as Freddie was driving down that highway and past the Luton sign, he heard this disembodied voice yell out to him or reach out to him and say, hey, this is what you should call this episode.
You know, Warren, when I was younger, I used to do a
Luton. It wasn't Luton, it was Luton.
I used to mess around with some audio, trying to do, I guess, a parody of science fiction like Star Trek and Star Wars and things.
Sure.
And anyway, I had an alien who came from a planet with a really weird name, and someone asked, why does your planet have that crazy name, sort of thing? And he said, well, you know, there's an estimated, whatever it is, umpteen trillion planets capable of supporting life in the known universe. And he says, so they were bound to run out of sensible things to call them sooner or later. And so I think, well,
that's how they came up with Earth.
Yeah. So I think, well, yeah, maybe. Well, if it can, yeah, when you think of it that way, well, there's only 26 letters in the alphabet. There's probably bound to be a planet called Luton somewhere in the damn universe, isn't there? You know? And then I started thinking, well, hang on, I'm from Corio. I wonder if there's, in Geelong, I wonder if there's a planet Corio somewhere out there. And then that got me into all sorts of, is there a planet called Croydon? And, is there... I mean, if it's only certain combinations of letters you can come up with, it's only 5 vowels. They've got to, if you translate all the planet names that aliens have got, there's bound to be a planet called every mad thing, really.
Well, pretty much. And I guess Sol 3 just didn't have the same ring to it. So that's
no, I guess not.
Yeah. So
isn't Luton on the way between Heathrow and Pinewood?
Yeah, we did a day trip when we were in London, and to get up to the Science Fiction Museum in Milton Keynes, you pass through Luton.
That's probably where he saw it and thought, what an exotic name.
Someone from Luton, someone from England told me once via the internet that the first rule of Luton is don't go to Luton.
Right.
So, yeah. Wow. Yeah, Bognor. Yeah. We're on the planet Bognor.
Yeah.
So that could happen. I can imagine that.
Boy, I got to say something. There's a bunch of new names out there, guys, and
Lauren Bacall.
We have a Lauren Bacall out there.
Oh, wow.
So,
if you're going to name yourself something, I mean,
yeah.
I'm chalking this up because I've actually, the last since about. The first of the year, I've really been trying to expand these groups I moderate here online because I knew I was going to be leading up to this Kickstarter. So there's a lot of new folks that have joined just in the last few weeks. And for anybody out there, maybe even tuning in for the first time, thank you for joining the family. And we really appreciate all your support out there, including Lauren Bacall.
Well, so I don't know. Did we kind of get to a final opinion about the rules of Luton? What's our overall feeling about it?
Listen, the one thing that I didn't chime in on is, we were talking about, a lot of dynamics between year 1, year 2, and when we mentioned the trees, there's a callback, of course, to Troubled Spirit. The way
there is.
Mateo was
communicating with plants
experiments there as well, and so is maybe an extension of that or that idea, perhaps.
Well, there was a lot of that in the 60s and 70s about ESP and trees.
Yeah. And it made me think, just listening to you guys discuss this, that Dave, you brought up all the glisters as well. And one of my observations when we did all the glisters a few weeks back with Eston Dunn was that I didn't have a problem with just as I don't have a problem with talking trees per se, in my mind, it's an interesting science fiction concept and the same with the Rock.
Day of the Triffids. I mean, the idea of living or intelligent trees as aliens is well and truly part of science fiction, definitely. So it's
well, yeah. I mean, there was an Outer Limits episode which was based on a novel called Corpus Earthling about
watched
that again recently.
These alien rocks talking.
Yeah, I love that episode. That was
a great episode.
That had the actor who played the vampire in the Night Stalker movie. Kolchak, Night Stalker. Janos Skorzeny, the actor who played him.
Yeah. It just the problem with all that glisters, which was evident in the original script, because it was rewritten many times. It just because there was no communication with the rocks per se. It kind of was an episode of people just walking back and forth from the Eagle.
Right. Yeah. Still certainly not without its problems, but yeah.
There's always, I find there's always a plus side. And, one of the interesting things which happened for me is All the Glisters was the first episode of season 2 that I saw. It's the only episode where there's no scenes on Alpha. So I actually didn't realize that I had no idea Bergman was gone. I had no idea that Alpha had changed,
Yeah.
And that brings me to an interesting point about Rules of Luton. The Alpha scenes are so short that they're almost, you could have actually not had them. You could have set the whole thing entirely on Luton and maybe just have, Tony's in the Eagle doing some repairs, rather than flying back to Alpha and getting another Eagle. He could have landed and done some repairs.
But it was a way to get him off the off the planet and out of the episode because he was busy.
But I did wonder if it might have been. I just sort of wondered if it might have been to the benefit of season 2 to have more episodes set entirely on a planet where you don't see Alpha at all.
Oh, sure.
Again, just so maybe the casual viewer might have imagined that Alpha was still season 1 Alpha when they choose it.
I mean, a better episode where they spent most of the time on the planet, was Immunity Syndrome.
Oh, yeah, well, that's probably one of the.
Because that was also a horrific planet set.
Devil's Planet. Isn't that
one? I wish they'd actually put Johnny Byrne's first 3 episodes all together if they could have packaged it that way. Start off the show with Metamorph, Immunity Syndrome, and the Dorcons.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about the Dorcons is that it brings up the idea that, hey, you've adopted this alien. Is she a liability rather than a help?
That's
someone
true.
comes hunting her, and almost devastates the base. And
it was just a shame they had no money by that time they shot that episode.
Yeah, it still has a lot of stuff that looks quite impressive though.
Oh,
it's the only time that underground command center takes a hammering in the whole of the second season. Yeah. So
one of my favorites was Dorcons and Immunity Syndrome. One thing I thought of in relation to Rules of Luton, your comment, David, about it maybe playing better as a Tony Maya episode. You said earlier. I had a thought.
I always thought that was the failing of the double up episodes because. I always wanted either Koenig and Helen to be together, or even if it was, as in Space Warp, where you had, Tony and Koenig together.
Right.
And, in Immunity Syndrome, there was a lot of scenes of just Helena and Maya together, and that worked pretty good.
Yeah.
They just kept wanting to split them up with one of the Landaus being a lead player.
Yeah.
And I think, it shows really badly in Mark of Arcanon, where Helena really is almost just following behind Tony like a puppy. She's not really taking command, and she should.
Mm-hmm.
No, not Mark of Arcanon. Sorry, the one with the robots. Blank on the title.
Oh, One Moment of Humanity.
One Moment of Humanity.
Yeah.
With the fake alpha base, it just didn't. I guess it didn't work for me because I saw the characters differently, and I liked the idea that they were playing up the Koenig Helena relationship as more of a couple than they did in the first season.
Well, they were, but it's interesting that in many instances early in year two, it's Helena and Tony that are paired together, and Koenig and Maya. It's almost like there was an agenda to split them up in some ways. But no, what I was going to say in relation to Luton here is because it was changed for whatever reason to be Koenig and Maya that were stranded. The scenes with Tony, I think, play a little better because they of course were building that whole idea of a Tony Maya relationship, and you can sort of see in some of Tony's scenes his desire to find them, and he's so driven. Maybe that's a little bit because he's got sort of a thing for Maya at the same time.
Well, yeah, that's laying the groundwork early on, but and we know it was originally a Tony Maya story because of the fact that when Michael Butterworth novelized it, that's how he had it, because he worked always from the first drafts.
That's right. Yeah.
I always thought that they missed a trick in the second season. I suppose, again, it probably comes back to what you were saying, David, about the need to make things simple for syndication.
Yeah.
But I always thought they kind of missed a trick by not having an episode where Tony and Maya first meet. She's introduced in the Metamorph, but she doesn't actually meet him. First meeting episode would have been great,
Right. Yeah.
To have his first impression of, oh wow, who's that?
Well, I think what was it? See, I hate when I blank on people's names. And he'll kill me because he knows me.
Give me a hint.
He also wrote a Space 1999 making of book, and he did a couple of the novels, and I did the intro for his book. That's where he's going to kill me.
Was that through Powys, David?
Yeah, through Powys. I'm trying to find the book on the bookshelf.
So it wasn't. Wait. No, he was just on John Kenneth Muir.
John Kenneth Muir. I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry.
Anyway. Kenneth Johnson. That's V. Yeah.
John Kenneth Muir. The book I wrote the intro of picks up where Metamorph leaves off.
Right. Yeah.
So he fills in that gap between Metamorph and whatever episode you want to proceed. So he does a nice job there of, I think, introducing them.
That would have been a nice touch, is to have that introductory episode, because that's, I think, a lot of people's critique is just episode 2. It's just like she's a part of the crew. There's no transition, there's no learning Alpha's ways or systems or protocols. It's just like, boom, she's there.
Yeah, and she's there, and she's suddenly the science officer, and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
but that's the reality of syndicated television. There's no there's no continuity, no building up over a long period. I mean, they certainly tried to do that with UFO, and unfortunately, when you watch it out of sequence, as most people did, it didn't work. But then when you watch them as they were produced, suddenly the continuity shows up.
Yeah. There's an interesting thing came up the last time I was rewatching season 2. When I watched All That Glisters again, it suddenly occurred to me that Dave Riley is the only other guy who ever thinks, hang on, I like Maya too. Why is Tony the only guy on Alpha who's allowed to like her? He actually, takes a shine to her himself.
Yeah.
And then they played into that with the part where he looks at her sideways and sort of says, "You too, huh? You also think the only thing I care about is that damn rock." He kind of has that feeling of, oh, everyone despises me, and I'm going to try and make up for it by doing something, brave and heroic.
Exactly.
At the end.
Yeah.
And this was an actor who was well known in Britain for playing a lot of dodgy or dark characters or villains. So it's quite interesting seeing him playing a humorous and sort of sympathetic character for a change.
Patrick
so even though it was kind of a wacky idea that I wondered whether the fact that he was meant to be like a Texan, but he ended up being Irish. Maybe he couldn't do the accent.
Yeah.
did they kind of split the difference and end up with a strange amalgam character,
Yeah.
an Irish cowboy? It made no sense.
But then they play up on that, and it works.
They kind of they kind of played up on it and made him a quirky character. And then the funny thing is that at the time, as a I was kind of a kid at the time, it didn't really bother me. I kind of chuckled at Nick Tate saying, fastest gun on Alpha, pushing his hat over his head and giving him a bit of grief. It kind of felt like it kind of fitted. And I mean, it's got the whole cast of, it's got everyone. It's got John, Helena, Alan, Tony Meyer, and it's funny. Space 1999 is a funny thing. It's a funny phenomenon. It's one of those shows where even when it kind of sucks, it's kind of like, this is definitely one of the weaker episodes, and there's a lot wrong with it. You can still kind of find some good points to it, which
those Roy and I've talked about that going into year 2, guys. You got to focus on the golden nuggets. You'll find them. Yep, they're there for every week.
And, we were used to that with shows like that, where you would have, out of 24 episodes, if you had 5 really good episodes, it was a good series.
Yeah.
It was always that ball.
And I mean, you could compare Martin Landau to Guy Williams on Lost in Space, where if you look at Lost in Space, even if the entire episode was completely surreal and ridiculous and outlandish and played absolutely for laughs, Guy Williams somehow kept John Robinson a very credible leader, a very believable father figure, a caring, level-headed man who wouldn't brook any nonsense from anybody, and always came across as kind of brave and devoted to his family, protective, thoughtful, and even with a little wry sort of sense of humor, like he's about to clobber Dr. Smith, and Dr. Smith turns around and black eye, and Guy Williams cracks up laughing and says, "Come on, Tiger, come back to the Jupiter 2. I'll see if Maureen can find a beefsteak for that eye."
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, he's even got a sense of humor,
In real life, he would have killed him by the second episode.
He would have thrown him out a damn airlock, for endangering his family.
That's true.
Yeah, but Maureen wouldn't have had that, which was clever. No. That was quite interesting. She wouldn't have her husband doing anything kind of ruthless. So, yeah. And somehow they kind of crazily got away with it, because you had this wonderful moment where someone says, why would you want a character like Dr. Smith around? Isn't he a absolute liability to your expedition? And Maureen Robinson just says, that would be our problem, wouldn't it? I thought, so wow, it's kind of interesting. But so Landau did the same thing. I always thought he maintained his frame, if you want to put it that way in modern terms. He kept Koenig as consistent as he possibly could, and as believable as he possibly could, even if the situation around him sometimes got a bit way out. You still kind of believe in Koenig as, okay, I've found myself on a planet with talking trees. I've found myself on a planet where there's a guy controlled by a rock, which seems to want me to wander around after it, or or whatever it might be. Or I'm now listening to a recorded message from a guy with a pink helmet jammed on his head. Clearly, it doesn't fit properly. I guess it was a last-minute production disaster.
It was supposed to be a grasshopper.
Yeah. I mean, if it had been a blank screen and a voiceover, or if they just said, to hell with it, make him humanoid, and just, like Alex Scott in Voyager's Return, it would have been 100 times better. But that's the thing. Martin Landau kept Koenig a relatively consistently well-framed, believable human, no matter whether the situation around him was sane or silly. And I think to me that's probably one of the biggest saving graces of the whole thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and you know what I mean. Say what you will about those scenes, right? Everybody references the dialogue between Koenig and Maya in this episode, but I mean, I for one, and again, a little bit to do with the wonderful music cues that were used to go along with it, right? Helped and enhanced things. But it was good character development. It was interesting to hear something about John Koenig's background, his former wife, and things like that. The thing that I was going to touch on from earlier, again, guys, to circle back, is that Adrian, you'd mentioned, when you take away all the fluff, there were some pretty darker or sinister elements of year two that a lot of people don't consider from time to time. You'd mentioned both Brian and
Tabor.
But I'd also throw in Magus to a certain extent.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Basically, he was into torture.
Yeah.
Really.
And a lot of eugenics. There was a lot of stuff about. I mean, the whole thing underpinning the rules of Luton is racial hatred. I mean, global racial war. I mean, wow, that hasn't gone out of date.
No, it hasn't. But like I said, in the hands of maybe a writer like Nigel Neal, it would have been a little bit more. Well, I wouldn't say obvious, but a little bit more dramatic in that sense.
He would have developed it to the forefront.
Yeah.
But then, I have that same thing where I'm.
By the way, the image we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
The same location was used in the UFO episode "Sound of Silence."
Yeah, I know. And I wish Roy was here, because actually Roy and I were on this embankment in 2014 when we went to Black Park. It's amazing.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm so envious, because I'm stuck down here in Australia, so I've never had a chance to meet any of the people.
That was. Tell you what, I mean, for the most part, you go to Black Park, and it's like, so it's a beautiful, idyllic setting. But when you stumble upon a location like this, it's just like it stops you in your tracks, and you recognize those trees that are growing up sideways out of the ground over the lake, and it's just like, wow, we were standing right there. And
one of the things that I'm envious about, you're down there in Australia, you get all the imprint stuff.
Yes, true. That's a good point.
Yes.
They do a superb job.
Yep.
This one they kindly sent to me because I helped them with it. But
nice.
I mean, all the other ones with the little hardcover books and everything are just incredible.
We do okay with some of the media that reaches us.
And most of them are region free as well, I believe.
Yeah. And we're this year we're finally getting it's the end of May. They are releasing here on Blu-ray the Australian filmed Ultraman series.
Okay.
Which is the first time it's been available here since the original airing, and they only put it out on VHS tape.
Huh. Wow.
That's good. It was a very good.
I'm currently writing a book about the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man series.
Oh yeah.
And in Australia, we didn't see the series at first. What we got was the pilot, the first two-parter, and then the movie length.
I think there were two movies originally before
it released as three cinema films. Yeah, so I saw them in the cinema, and I guess unlike people watching on a cathode ray screen, what really struck me seeing it in the cinema was the stuntman Fred Waugh, who played the Spider-Man in the suit.
Yes,
he went up the side of real buildings.
Yes,
and,
he did.
On a wire. He was a former circus performer. So here's little me, 11 or 12 or something in the cinema, and I'm looking up on this massive movie screen, and here's these panoramic visions of an American city from the side of a skyscraper, and here's this guy who's on a wire that you can't see. It was very well done. And he's in the full Spider-Man costume, and he's just, going up the wall of this skyscraper. So it was stunning. And so I was really surprised when I found out that, the critics who'd just seen it as a TV show in England and the States didn't think much of the show. And I'm saying, well, hang on, I just saw it as three movies, and each movie, the stunt work was astonishing to me.
Stunt work was terrific. The biggest criticism of the show was the fact that it basically abandoned much of the comic book lore.
Yeah, but it did have a thing which
shows did back then.
Was that it felt like Spider-Man was in the real world.
Yeah,
and that was kind of the appeal for me, I guess. As a kid. Yeah, so that's what I'm writing about at the moment. So yeah, but yeah, there's an Australian perspective for you. Because we saw 3 cinema films rather than the series. It's made things like that have made me realize that how we perceive a TV show often depends on how did we see it. You know, how was it presented?
Yes.
Like the final Quatermass serial by Nigel Neal was shown as 4 one-hour episodes in the UK, and the critics really hated it. In Australia, they put part 1 and 2 together and part 3 and 4 together. So we saw it as 2 movie-length installments.
Oh,
So it was like a movie, but then at the end of the first 2-hour movie, it says to be continued. And you're like, oh.
that's
And then
right.
up comes a trailer for the next part, and the following week we all had to tune in for another movie length.
Yeah,
see
Roy
the ending.
and I did a show on the
Oh,
Quatermass
you know.
serials and movies, and I remember there was a third version because all I saw here was the original 4-part TV version, and then the omnibus version, which cut out, 2 major subplots, mostly
Yeah.
out of the beginning of episode 3. The old folks cut out.
Yeah, Nigel Neal was such a master of his craft. He actually he explained in an interview that he wrote
Whispering, that's it. There he goes. There he goes.
this huge set of subplots, knowing that they were going to be removed for the movie version.
Yeah.
And so he was able to, and because he was so good, he was able to write them so that if you saw them, they added something to the story, but if they were removed, it didn't take anything away from the story.
Oh, I mean, I like watching the original serials as much as the movies. So
yeah, huge Quatermass fan, and I think it permeates British science fiction. I think if you look at the difference between Star Trek and Space 1999, you can really see the fundamental difference is you can see that horror theme from right back to the first Quatermass experiment runs through. I mean, the first one was Karun, the astronaut, was possessed or replaced by an alien. And if you look at like Space 1999 episodes like Space Brain,
Force of Life
from space. Yeah. Force of Life is very much a Quatermass alternative version where he's absorbing energy and again it goes to the behind the sofa, hiding behind the settee and looking through the gaps in your fingers when Zorif becomes this horrifically burnt up creature at the end with glowing light coming out of his eyes. There's a huge Quatermass influence which runs through.
I think the aliens and Bringers of Wonder are very similar to the aliens in Quatermass 2, the ones that are growing in the dome.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. The giant blobs that came out of the dome.
Yeah. So there's a lot of. I mean, Doctor Who is riddled with Quatermass references.
Oh yeah, I think UNIT, the idea of UNIT, the brigadier and the soldiers help it with a scientific advisor. The Doctor was virtually putting him into the Quatermass role.
Yes,
and I think even when they went into the future, there'd be an authority figure with and guards with ray guns and things, and the Doctor would be telling them, you're doing it all wrong. You need to look at it scientifically and use your intelligence. And it was like, well, even when they've gone to the future or another planet, they're just transposing that same kind of situation to the future. But it was still very much a Quatermass type of a thing where, I was saying the other day, the line which always cracked me up was Leela, the warrior woman, complains that all the weapons and guns and bullets and bombs and things aren't solving the situation. And the Doctor says, shall we try using our intelligence? And she said, well, if you think it's a good idea. That seemed to be science fiction's message to the world, wasn't it?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I mean, Nigel was one of the classic writers like Rod Serling that knew how to take, modern problems and turn them on their head in science fiction and deliver a message without hitting you over the head.
Yeah, and I mean, when I went on to university, having been raised on all of these shows, and I studied literature there, and I started reading Shakespeare, and I realized, I thought, Shakespeare had a social concern in his writing,
Mhm.
and you can see it's still there in Rod Serling. It's there in Gene Roddenberry and Harlan Ellison. It's there in the best of Doctor Who. It's in UFO and Space 1999. You know, they were talking about war. They were talking about survival. They're talking about racism and, you know, getting along with. In fact, you could say the whole of space opera is about diversity. It's about, you know, meeting different life forms, and some of them want to be your friend, and some of them want to, you know, invade or dominate, or, you know,
Eat you.
some you're compatible with, and some are evil parasites, and you have to be, you got no choice but to blow them up.
The trick is writing a story where where both sides are likable and still have some kind of conflict that makes the story, you know, perk along without being boring. And unfortunately, you know, TV back then was black and white. It was good guys, bad guys.
That's why science fiction always seemed to have the edge, didn't it, on the mainstream? Because, you know, even in the rules of Luton, the alien leader, and this is the point I keep failing to bring up. It was David Jackson, the guy who played Gan on Blake 7, played the voice of the judges of Luton and played the leader of the aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why he's got such a great voice. So he had a really good speaking voice.
Yeah, sometimes
and he says, I don't wish to kill you, but I must. And then Koenig spares him. And so it has this thing of, you know, again, the conflict is there, but they're not all bad.
Right. The aliens are fighting or not, are being forced to do it. It you know, it was like how they did Arena originally between and Legorn. Legorn really was just fighting for his own people's lives. But, you know, in the original Frederick Brown story, there's no, you know, morality to it. It's you're fighting for the survival of your people, and that's it. It's a clear black and white story.
Interestingly, Blake 7, you mentioned before how Blake 7 also did a variation on this trope of Arena with the episode Duel. There's a later one which does it not as much, but still has it as a central trope, and that's Death Watch. And the interesting thing in that one is not only is the two representatives having a fight, but the audience wear psychic links on their foreheads so they can experience what the two combatants are going through.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, this is really predicting, you know, reality TV, like, you know, Survivor and SAS and all these sort of shows where you're living vicariously through the people you're watching.
Well,
you know?
Then again, we go back to Nigel Neal with Year of the Sex Olympics, which was exactly that was predicting, you know, reality TV and people voting for who's going to win or lose.
When I first watched Year of the Sex Olympics, I couldn't believe it. You know, I'd been watching Big Brother and all of these shows on TV, and I watched it and I'm thinking, how is this thing so old, and yet it some of the scenes in it felt so modern, because it literally had the cameras looked exactly like in the Big Brother house. There's a behind the scenes with some technicians rushing in and fixing something up with headphones on. I'm thinking, this looks exactly like, you know, the latest, you know, and then the intruder in the Big Brother house is from a prison. He's a homicidal maniac in a twist that only Nigel Neal would come up with, and literally kills one of them, and the dad goes nuts and kills him in retaliation, and the audience loves it. The ratings go up.
Exactly.
That's so wonderfully Nigel Neal.
Yeah.
But I mean, apart from the fact that the law won't let TV producers actually kill someone for entertainment, so there is a line that they haven't been allowed.
So far.
Yeah, they haven't give it another 30 years. I don't know. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, wow, this was so close to the way things were going to go. It's almost uncanny to watch.
It's amazing how some people thought these things out years ago.
Well, listen, fellas, I think we're going to start to wind down here. We've been on for over an hour and a half already, believe it or not. And,
well, I give the rules of Luton probably objectively, it's maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10.
Okay.
But going by what's in my heart, I'll give it an 8 out of 10 because I kind of love it. You know,
Okay.
it definitely could have been a lot better in some ways. It's
Yeah.
definitely got the cornball element, which sticks to Fred Freiberger's reputation.
Yeah.
But directed by Val Guest, filmed on a beautiful location, and Martin Landau, what an actor at a time when most men on TV were kind of stoic. Here's this guy, he breaks down into tears at one point. He loses his temper. He really gave Koenig an emotional life that was bigger than what was on the page.
And we learned more about the character than we had in most episodes.
Yeah.
So yeah,
We learn character, and there's a thing against a thing about a global racial hatred driven war and an anti-prejudice theme.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just it kind of is in my heart as I'm going to say emotionally, personally, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Objectively, it's probably only a 6 if I'm being utterly realistic.
I would agree with you. Yeah.
I was just thinking about it, and I'd 6.5. Sort of right in between there, and it's interesting, you know, when Roy and I have got around to doing these segments, and of course you rewatch the episode in preparation, and then when you get through the discussion with different people, you know, each time out, everybody brings a different perspective, makes you think about things a little differently. That's what's so fun about this, guys, and this episode included. It's You've both given me sort of pause to reconsider this episode. It's not that I ever hated it, but it's just I have a better appreciation for it.
It's like, you know, when first time I read Robert's book Destination Moonbase Alpha, and he like slaughtered episodes that I thought were great, and I'm like going, well, maybe he's right about that. The way he's looking at it, you know, there's things that I didn't see, but then other episodes he thought were terrific. I'm like going, nah. He's talking out of his hat.
It's been really fun, and this episode in particular, because I have two esteemed authors in front of me, and
wow,
we've all you know, had our own personal takes and opinions on the episodes down through the years, but it's so much fun to sit and discuss them all these years, like 50 years later. Who would have thought?
We have the esteemed David Hirsch, and then there's just little old me from Australia.
Well, Adrian,
your name shows up on Amazon.
You've done very well as well, my friend. So,
I put my name in on Amazon, and apparently I've written a lot of books on Abraham Lincoln, and I'm like, I wouldn't go on Jeopardy with that.
Too funny.
Good old on stage.
I won't spend a lot of time in the shout outs. I think everybody is sort of aware, so I'm not going to drone on about the Kickstarter next week.
Can you believe we had Anton Phillips?
I know.
My God.
And he wasn't even in the episode.
Yeah.
He wasn't even in the episode. It would have been a better episode if Anton had been in it. You know,
this is true. True.
If we could have had someone back on base,
it would have been a better series had he been in it. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, yeah. I think they should have flown a dead Alphan pilot back to Alpha for examination, and Anton should have looked at him and said, "You know, this is going to sound crazy. I think plant vines strangled this guy somehow. What the hell's going on that planet? Could it be
plant
intelligent life forms that are plants? This." Wow, that's beyond all human. Now, Nigel Neal would have written that scene in a heartbeat. That would have been, that would have elevated the whole episode. I would have gone up another point for that.
Yeah. It is.
That would have made it a 9 out of 10.
Because, you know what, seeing, I mean, and I mentioned this recently. I mean, for me, watching year 2, it was always nice to see Nick and Xenia and. And it would have been nice to see Anton a little more consistently as well, because it in my mind, it just provided that little bit of continuity that was, I think, missing overall for most people. So,
yeah, I think they forgot how much medical centers and hospitals do play a very big part in British science fiction. If you go back to Victor Carroon in the hospital in the Quatermass experiment, it's a big part of British science fiction to have someone being examined by a doctor going, I think he's undergoing a weird change since he's tripped to Alpha Centauri, you know?
He's got strange purple corpuscles.
Yeah, they should have put Antoine on a really good contract for year 2 and paid him his due, because
they should have.
He would have definitely added something.
Them all. It just was. You know.
And did they really fail completely to understand how popular Victor Bergman was?
Good point.
I think they did, and I think it was a question of, it was a question of money, and that fact that Jerry Anderson and Barry Morse just were like talking across purposes, and by the time Barry Morse was willing to accept their offer, they had already decided not to bring him on.
Yeah, I think that was a big mistake.
It was just. I think it just came down to the fact that Jerry Anderson was just grateful that he got the second series, and whatever New York told him to do, he was going to do it just employed.
I mean, generally speaking, none of Jerry's shows ever got a second season, so it was remarkable that it actually happened at all.
No, he did actually get second seasons on a couple of shows, like Supercar and Stingray technically had second seasons, and Thunderbirds had a second season, but it was abbreviated because they just decided they couldn't sell second seasons anymore, so they just ordered full seasons. I mean, UFO was supposed to have a second season, but
I spent a lot of years bitter about the fact that a second season of UFO never happened, because boy, did I love that show. I was nuts about that show.
Yeah. It was a great show, and it was very adult for its time. I mean, it broke a lot of rules with its format.
Some very adult storytelling, and it almost did happen, guys. Let's be realistic.
Well,
right? and
that's what space.
That's why we're all here. Yeah.
Technically, UFO had 3 seasons, but they just changed the titles.
You could argue that Space 1999 season 1 is technically the compromised second season of UFO. And then the second season of Space 1999 is the extremely compromised third season.
Because originally the moon base was, a tremendous moon base, and it had the section where the action was going to take place was which like Shadow. It was a secure section that the average person would go to. It was a city.
Yeah. He virtually moved Straker's office and the medical center and the control center of Shadow to one location, which was on the moon.
That's what it was supposed to be. They were supposed to take all the action of UFO off Earth because Abe Mandel hated all the Earthbound episodes. I think that's what science fiction was. I mean, Jerry walked into his office. They said, "What are your favorite episodes of UFO?" And Jerry rattled off like question of priorities, and Abe Mandel said, "No, those were the worst ones."
Yeah, that's it's
perspective. Hey, it's I've said to Roy before that when I was a kid, I hated question of priorities, but as an adult, it's definitely hands down. It's like in my top 3.
Yeah, when you look at like Identified, and then you look at the Dorcons, you can see over a 3 seasons. It took more than 3 years to make, obviously. But you can see over whatever it is, it adds up to 7, like Star Trek.
7 years.
Yeah. It's a remarkable achievement in television production, and so many highlights in there, and good things to appreciate. But also, what really sticks out to me is how it started off very, very kind of cult TV, kind of like The Prisoner, and ended up very, very mainstream, like a wannabe Star Trek. So it's how it evolved, the evolution. They start off. You've got an actor in a very skin tight Sylvia Anderson designed outfit with a blonde wig, and by the end you've got people with their hair grown out, wearing very relaxed jackets and
Yep.
flares sitting around. It's like the costumes, the hairstyles, the attitudes of the characters, from very, very tense and serious to joking and laughing and doing banter. The whole evolution was to become much more commercial as I went along.
Well, I think it was also fashion at the time, because UFO is very 60s and space science 70s.
Yeah, and you go from fearing the aliens in UFO to loving the alien with Maya. You know?
Yeah.
So the evolution of just the evolution from identified through to the Dorcons of the attitudes towards the characters, the attitudes towards aliens, the attitudes towards the kind of storytelling, production, everything. The way it all sort of evolved is fascinating to look at it as an overview, as a whole, and sort of come away going, yeah, they started off, you know, aliens are mysterious, unseen, the humans are desperate, tense, wound up and scared to death, to, you know, in the end that there's an alien woman sitting next to them and the guy's kind of flirting with her. Is there anything else from your past you haven't told us, Maya? You know, well, that's an inappropriate question to ask a lady, Tony. You know, it's like, this is an alien from outer space. Straker would have been, you know, scared she was going to come and harvest his organs 3 seasons ago.
Yeah.
See how the evolution.
UFO, the only good alien's a dead alien.
Yeah, now it's the only good alien.
Right over the
white skirt, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, if an alien looks good in a skirt, she's a good alien. You know,
It's true.
7 of 9.
Yeah.
David Bowie's song "Loving the Alien." So
Yeah.
True.
Well, listen, guys. Listen, thanks very much again. I'm actually going to have to wrap up myself due to a work commitment here in about 30 minutes. But listen, Adrian, I'm just thrilled that you jumped on at the last minute there and were able to.
My wife's never going to believe this happened. She thinks I went home, went to bed, had a nap, did nothing, and then picked her up from work.
Warren could tell you what it was like when he first met my wife in 2017. She had never been to a convention in her life. She had never seen me at a convention. And she was like, who is this person I met? But I'll tell you a story. Warren knows this, but you'll get a kick out of this. We're at the first day of the convention. We've been there since the night before. And finally she comes down and I'm helping everyone set things up. And I'm talking to Nick Tate, and my wife walks up and I said, Renee, I'd like to introduce you to We've Met. Huh? We've met this morning. What do you mean you met? He says, yeah, I've already met her. They were out at the pool before breakfast together. And I'm like, huh? What? Nick Tate already knows my wife? What?
Well, he is Nick Tate. I mean, you know.
He is. There's only one Nick Tate.
He was just doing his Nick Tate thing. Come on.
He was just doing the Nick Tate thing. He's just a charming larrikin from Australia. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Boy. And I tell you what, that's a good segue, guys. Rather than a bunch of slides and pictures, we've all seen them. We all know what's going on. Actually, really quickly, Sunday, we're going to have a Kickstarter update.
This is Return to Moonbase Alpha.
Yep. Next Tuesday evening, we're going to have another show the night before the Kickstarter launch on April 1st. So there's going to be lots going on in the next week. We've all seen this. I still can't believe it, guys.
And that's no April Fool's joke.
Just unbelievable. So we're all hoping and praying, of course, that everything goes off without a hitch on both fronts. And I've got a couple of quick little videos here to run if you guys want to stick around. And let me just ask you this before I get into the first one. Would you guys be interested in seeing the new trailer we put together for Return to Moonbase Alpha?
If that's what's going to run right now.
Yeah.
So
first though, here's the next segue. You'll get it as soon as you see it.
Hi, I'm Australian actor Nick Tate. You know, 50 years ago, I played in a television series, sci-fi series, called Space 1999. I played the chief astronaut, Captain Alan Carter. I hope you will join me in supporting the new Return to Moonbase Alpha Kickstarter, which launches on April 1st. Head on over to the pre-launch page and click the button to be notified when it goes live. And you can return with me to Moonbase Alpha in 2026.
So there's Nick doing the Nick thing.
Wow.
Can always count on Nick.
Yeah.
As an Australian, having an Australian astronaut be the sort of the hero flying around in the Eagles, you know, in space dogfights on the show was a big thrill, I have to say, as a kid, you know, because I was one of those kids whose dream at 5 years old was to grow up and go to NASA and become an astronaut.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then to know the character, it was from your home country. What an extra special thrill, hey?
Oh yeah, it was exciting, yeah. And the fact that he was just terrific as well was made it so good, because everybody in Australia, of course, you know, no matter what you were like, you convinced yourself, oh yeah, we're all like him, you know, he's just like us. We're, you know, if your hair was dark brown, you convinced yourself that I've got blonde hair just like you, Tate. You know, if you had no charm whatsoever, you convinced yourself, oh yeah, when I say g'day mate, I sound as charming as Alan from Space 99.
No kidding. So anyway, guys, listen, with the trailer, this one's actually going to premiere officially next Wednesday as well, on April Fool's Day, and we're going to use it right on the Kickstarter landing page to promote the project and what we're doing here. I think everybody's pretty familiar with that Anton trailer we did a couple years ago, and how that sort of set things up where, you know, picking up on the threads from Message from Moonbase Alpha that the moon would be returning. They've been living on Terra Alpha. It's been 25 years. Yada yada. We did do a trailer, sort of a one-off, about 6 weeks ago, called Ghost Call. That was a little different. It was sort of set up to be like a fever dream of Alan's, and so it's a little darker. It's a little more haunting and ethereal, and it plays on a couple of themes from Collision Course with Ara, of course, and sort of calling him back, right, giving him the, you know, this is sort of saying that this has been the driving force behind Alan wanting to return. But anyway, we have a third one put together, and I've had the help of a very, very talented individual. A couple of people have seen this now, but I'd like to show it to you guys and just get your opinion here.
Sure.
And for anybody,
Warren, can I interject
Absolutely.
with a quick anecdote?
Yep.
I showed my son, he liked UFO, so I said, oh, well, you've got to see Space 1999. So I showed him the one about Ara, and, you know, she tells him to just let the planets touch and then it vanishes.
Yes.
This is the generational difference, I guess. My son's only 20, so his reaction to it was that Koenig had basically met a kind of a space pothead who was like, hey man, just let it flow. You know, don't do anything. You know what? Your planet's gonna crash into my planet. Let it flow, man. Just let the universe just flow. You know? So he thought it was this was the craziest damn show he'd ever seen.
Yeah, it is a bit of a fever dream, that episode. Yeah,
it shows you the different sensibilities.
Have you guys? I mean, I'm not sure how you're fixed for time. I might need to run, so I'm just going to be able to run this one trailer, and then we'll have to wrap up here, guys. But no, I love that, Adrian. That's.
We'll have to do this on another episode sometime soon.
Yeah. I'll run it quick. It's only 2 minutes and 50 seconds. So if you guys want to check it out, you can be some of the first here. And here it is.
Let's do it.
Yep, you betcha.
Terra Alpha Status Report. Operation Genesis Update. Dr. Dino Vedeschi recording. Many years ago, when I was just a boy, my father and I took a trip to New Elna, our primary capital. Our pilot and friend was Captain Alan Carter, who flew us there in Eagle One. The view over our new world was breathtaking. Ever since that time, I have longed to get back into that pilot seat. And now it appears that I'll actually have that chance very soon. For months now, we've been tracking the moon's approach back into range, and detailed plans are well underway for a few of us to return. Ancient technology that's been discovered here on Terra Alpha will enable us to repair most of Moonbase Alpha's vital systems. Life support will be powered up, and the long-deserted base will be brought back into life after all these years. The decision to leave our home, our families, was not an easy one. As I prepare to embark with my own family, I'll never forget my mother Maya, or my father, Anthony Dean Vedeschi, whom sadly we lost several years ago. We return to the cosmos to honor the memories of everyone we've lost, and to continue the journey the people of Earth started way back on September the 13th, 1999. Operation Genesis will allow us to re-establish a living, breathing presence in outer space and fulfill the destiny of Moonbase Alpha. This is Dr. Dino Vedeschi, signing off.
That's very nice.
Wow. Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. Very interesting. So that was actually Tony Anholt's son.
It was Christian Anholt.
Christian Anholt. Yeah. Yeah. I saw an interview with him recently on YouTube where he was on Jamie Anderson's podcast. So yeah.
Yeah, he was in London, of course, and I'm just trying to find a picture here, of course, in a hurry. And we got talking about doing something like this way back then, right? And he was just so thrilled to be there, and even this famous shot where he's recreating that moment, right? And then, of course, we were able to take that and sort of make it a meta moment within this trailer. For eagle-eyed viewers out there, we used that picture and we put Christian in a little command outfit and colored, and yeah. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, nice. Well, this is all very exciting, and it really brings to mind the fact that I feel we've kind of lost something by not having shows like Space 1999 anymore. I would love to see them get back to making weekly episodic sort of TV like that again. Yeah, I mean, I loved Breaking Bad, but I've seen a lot of shows on Netflix and things like that since, which have kind of made me realize not every story is as good as Breaking Bad. Not every story really deserves to be arced out to, an 8 or 10 episode season. Some stories really would be a lot better off just being a self-contained episode or a 2-part story and not dragged out for weeks and weeks and weeks, unless you've got a really special story to tell. Sometimes arcing it over an entire season isn't worth it,
Right, especially when they dribble just little bits
yeah
along the way, and you're like, well, that wasn't a great episode, but they did tell me something.
Yeah you feel like you have to invest 10 hours now into something to get a storyline that really you get to the end and you think, was that really worth it?
Yeah.
Was that worth that investment of time?
The big finale,
Yeah, and the season finales are often a disappointment anyway.
Yeah, because it's never what you expect.
That's true. But no, listen, fellas, thanks very much again. And just thank you to everybody out there for tuning in. I know Roy usually goes through some of the names. I had a lot going on. I wasn't used to this part of it. So thank you both for carrying a lot of that conversation about Luton, as well as I worked away behind the scenes. And
I'm amazed that you didn't tell me to shut up a few times.
No, goodness, no, this was a lot of fun.
It was great hearing, how you saw things. Yeah.
Different opinions, I know. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
absolutely. So no, listen. Thanks.
There may be something weird in the drinking water here in Australia. I think sometimes I do sometimes come out with some very odd opinions, unusual perspectives. But
look, for years they've been telling us Americans that the toilets flush backwards in Australia, so we have weird ideas too.
yeah. That was
a Simpsons episode. Yeah.
They do say Australians are like flies clinging to the ceiling because we're down under. How do we not fall off?
Awesome. And thanks to everybody out there for the comments in the trailer.
Do me a favor. Send Adrian my email address so we can.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. For sure. Let's all keep in touch.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we'll wrap up then. And thanks to everybody out there. Be watching over the next week for some exciting updates and shows.
Well,
so
good night to you, Warren, and good day to you, Adrian.
Yes. For sure.
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to meet you, David.
You too.
And Warren, thank you so much for having me on. This has been fantastic.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you back anytime.
Wonderful. I'll be glad to.
All right.
Take care, guys.
You bet. See you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Rory would say, here's the Star Trek connection. Live long and prosper.
I can't do it.
Keep those eagles flying.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right. Good night, everyone.